Roofers who are profiting less than $10 million every single year cannot afford to make these mistakes. These are actually the exact same mistakes that have prevented me from scaling my campaigns. And once I learned how to overcome them, I was able to scale my campaigns to millions of dollars a month and spend for my clients. And if you're wondering why the hell should I listen to this kid, my name's Nick. I founded a company called NCT Media Group. We help solar and roofing companies scale their businesses with paid ads. The first mistake that I see happen a lot with roofers in particular is they'll say certain strategies don't work. So this is more of like a mindset shift. So a lot of these videos, the first one's gonna be like a mindset shift type thing, because if your mindset is off on things, no matter what you do, you're gonna execute it poorly, right? So for the first thing, it's like people say, paid ads don't work, or door knocking doesn't work, or direct mail doesn't work, or cold email doesn't work for roofing. I've already tried it. It doesn't work for me. So that shit is something that I laugh at. So like I look at roofers and I like laugh at them when they say stuff like that, because it is completely and utterly just illogical. Like there's no reason behind that, right? So paid ads do work. They work very well. People make it work, except when you tried paid ads or when you tried cold email or when you tried door knocking, you failed at it. So when you're picking a strategy, pick it, and we'll get into this like a little bit later in the video, and then execute, right? So everything works, so I just want to get that out of the way, because if that's still in your mind, there's still like a little crumb of that in your mind, like cross off becoming top of your market, just cross it off your list, because it's not going to happen. So just want to make sure that's the first mistake. Everything works. Okay, so the first mistake, so XYZ doesn't work, everything works, but this kind of leads us into the next thing. So low leverage focus. So just because everything works doesn't mean like everything is equal. There are typically strategies that will give roofers specifically low returns on their time or low returns on their dollar. And they're focusing most of their time on these low leverage strategies. So most of these strategies have to do with people being active in order to get the leads through the door. So what do I mean by that? So for door knocking, you have to go actively not walk around and knock on doors to get leads. Or even things like cold calling to a certain extent, like you have to have people manually dialing. And you can create systems around this to make them easier. But when there's people involved, there's always going to be inefficiencies. People get tired, people need to take breaks, people get sick, people need to go on vacation, stuff like that. So my rule of thumb for scaling anything, like even scaling our own agency, but also of course scaling our clients, if there's an opportunity to replace a person with a system that can work 24/7 around the clock, on Christmas Eve, on Kwanzaa, they work all the time, that is always preferred. So, I'm a paid ads guy. Paid ads work all the time. They're generating leads all the time. I don't have to go knock doors or even train, manage, and hire a team that goes and knocks doors for me. Lots of inefficiencies. So I'll see roofers, like they won't even bat an eye at things like paid ads or things like cold outreach, where like you're sending thousands of messages without even thinking. And they're putting all of their time into like handing out flyers and trying to get referrals and door knocking, even door knocking themselves, which is the worst thing. Like if you own your roofing company and you're door knocking yourself still, you got to get out of that. Extremely low leverage. You're pulling a lever that there's like, a little bit of grip on it. Like you're not pulling those long levers. So we got to get away from that. So for the third mistake, I see a lot of roofers focusing on like way too many marketing channels at once as well. So if you learn from mistake 2, you're focusing on a high leverage form of marketing. But you also don't want to focus on many forms of marketing at the same time. So you don't want to like try to figure out paid ads and try to figure out cold outreach and try to figure out your cold calling team and your door knocking team all at the same time. Just like with anything in life, when you're trying to multitask and split your focus, no matter what people say, like, oh, I'm a good multitasker, I think that's bullshit. Like if you're trying to focus on many different campaigns at once and figure out that learning curve for all of them at the same time, you are going to get absolutely smashed by the guy in your market who is putting his heads down in the ads manager or putting his head down into testing different copy for cold email, because he is focusing all of his energy into that one thing. It compounds. So like if you have like 10 energy points throughout the day to focus on any given thing, if you put all of them in one thing, it starts to compound. But if you're like kind of rationing 2 here, 2 there, it doesn't compound. So you want to put all of your focus into one strategy and learn how to master that. So for me, like when we were starting our agency, and we're getting clients on the board and we're trying to find a way to book appointments for them, like we're trying to test different types of service delivery. We didn't know quite yet what we were going to do. So we were trying to figure out SMS, cold email, and paid ads at the same time. We're like, oh, if we put our eggs in different baskets, then maybe like we'll have a better chance of finding like a winning strategy. Oh, and I also throw cold calling in there as well. So it was at 4 strategies. And I'll let you guess what happened. Nothing happened. You got horrible results. Like it was not going well whatsoever. Only when we decided to like burn the boats of the 3 other strategies and focus in on paid ads, we got disgusting at it. Disgusting for our clients and then also for ourselves, for getting clients to the board for us. Like to this day, like we are almost primarily doing paid ads for our B2B side, right? Because like we still have a ton of room. And that's another thing. Like you almost don't even want to open up another marketing channel until it's like pretty hard for you to find somebody else in your market that is doing more volume than you. So like let's just say you're spending like $1,000 a day on ad spend, and I know like a lot of ad analogies, that's just what I do. So $1,000 a day on ad spend, and you're like, oh, I think the market's capped. Like I think I capped my market. But there's another guy in your same industry that you met at like RoofCon or Door to Door Con. He's in your same market, and he's spending $10,000 a day, right? Like there's room. So I see a lot of people like they'll also cap themselves as well. Okay, so you got down number 3. You are now focusing on an extremely high leverage form of marketing, and that is the only thing, and you are becoming a master at it before you even think about opening up another channel. So glad we got that out of the way. The 4th one, so mistake 4, well, let me write this down real quick. Mistake 4, and I know my handwriting stinks. Hold on. Sales warrior. So what I see a lot of guys in the door-to-door industry in general, but roofing specifically, is they are so utterly sales focused. It's just sales, sales, sales. I'm not where I want to be. I just got to get better at sales. So I'm actually a sales guy myself. Like I'm a sales guy. I love sales. Honestly, like more than marketing, surprisingly, like I own a marketing company. But when you really think about the KPIs that matter the most, the KPIs that are closest to the front end as possible are always going to be the most important in terms of your conversions. So the very first KPI, arguably like your click-through rate. So the rate at which somebody sees your ad. So this is for like another paid ads analogy. The rate at which somebody sees your ad, like what percentage of those people click on the ad? So if you are super focused, like trying to put all your focus into increasing your close rate, maybe you can get it up by like 4%, which is like a pretty good increase. Like if you're at like 30, like now you have like a 34% close rate, you just got like a 10% and some change on your close rate, which is great. But if you got your click rate up to like 4%, like it was 2%, now it's 4% higher, so now it's 6%, you just 300x your lead flow. 300x your lead flow. So instead of focusing all your time of like, oh, I gotta handle this objection better, focus on, how do I get my hooks better? How do I make my creative better? How do I make my offer more enticing on the creative? Or like with cold outreach, like how do I make my subject line better? Stuff like that, right? If you're cold calling, like how do I make my first 30 seconds of my call as good as possible? Even before that in cold calling, like how do I have no spam likely numbers ever again? How do I have local presence on every single number that I call with? So those are the most important things. So as you start to move down in the process, each KPI becomes less and less important. So to make it easier to understand, like something like show rate is typically higher leverage to get down than something like close rate. And the reason for this is as well, like, why like the front to back is more important is because you can only get your close rate to 100%. You can only get it to 100%. You can't close more than 100% of the people you sit down with. That doesn't make sense, right? Unless you count referrals in there, but even then. But what you can do is 2,000x your lead flow. You can't 2,000x your close rate. So usually what I say to like roofing guys, like people that own their companies, like one, if you're still doing sales, I would stop doing that. Like I would try to outsource that to other people to focus on, like other super talented A-player killers that can sell, right? So try to find those guys and bring them in and remove yourself from that equation. Because the second you as the owner stop putting all of your man hours into like going to appointments or door knocking, even worse, now you're focused on how do I 2,000x my lead flow? How do I 3x my click-through rate? How do I triple my show rate? Stuff like the more important KPIs, right? So what I tell my clients, like when I see them in that spot, like I really urge them to like first like change your standard on who you hire. I see a lot of roofers like it's only them and like their son and maybe their nephew like closing deals. Like I'm sure you love your son and your nephew, but there's a good chance they're not A players. Like you need to stop and think to yourself, like, are they really on my team because they're an A player and they're pushing the needle forward, or are they just on my team because of proximity? Right? So we want to think about that. So that's something that's super important. So we want to raise our standards on who we bring through on our team. And also we want to get a fire SOP down. So SOPs are one of the highest leverage things that you can place in your business because you're training people without putting hours in. So you just make it really, really good. You put your head down and focus in on an SOP. So for like a sales training SOP, right? Mine, for my company, it's like I spent probably 3 weeks on it and it is amazing. Now when I bring a new rep on, they're ramped in like 2 days, right? So raise your standards, only bring A players in. Don't just hire because they're kind of like close to you, because that's lazy, right? Only hire A players, get an extremely good SOP down, and then take yourself out of sales and focus all in on the things that are actually important, right? Like obviously like your delivery is great. Like we want to be putting down some good jobs. Like we want to have some good crews on board, like not just some like random people that we found like at Home Depot or something, right? Like we want to have actually good crews, but like that's like without to say. We're talking about marketing here, right? When it comes to bringing more deals through the door, close rate is like one of the last things I'm thinking about, unless it's like absolutely atrocious, right? But most of the time it's not because once again, like roofing is a need-based product. Like if they needed roof, like it's probably gonna close. Like if the guy can go through a script pretty easily, right? So I just wanna, like that's another mistake. Like I see a lot of people like, they're just the sales warrior. Like they're like, oh, I want a golden door and that's just who I am, right? But we gotta like think like a business owner, right? Like we wanna think high leverage. We wanna pull ourselves out of those low leverage activities, not be a sales warrior, and be honestly more like a marketing warrior and more of a leader, right? So that's mistake number 4 that I see. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Mistake number 5. So this is another mental one, similar to this, but this one is almost like think of it as like a stop loss of like you putting your potential success and putting the ceiling right over your head. So this is pretty much in short, like you expecting these unreal returns. Like you were expecting like a 13x ROAS, and if it's under that, like I'm gonna shut the campaign off, right? So I'll have people all the time, they'll come through the door and they'll pretty much be like, hey Nick, I heard about you guys or whatever, can you help me out with my marketing? We'll talk, and then at the end of the conversation, they'll be like, hey, everything sounds good, but just wanna let you know, like, we need to be in this 13x ROAS range, or it really doesn't make sense for us. And that's when I'll like look at them in the eyes and I'll start laughing at them, right? Like just like these guys, I'll laugh at them. I laugh at these guys too when the expectation is just set completely incorrectly. So all I care about is just your cold hard return on cash. So how much money did you spend? How much money did you net? That's it. So I don't care if it's a 2x, I don't care if it's a 19x. Like if we're in a profitable range and there's room for scale, then let's scale it. Right? Okay, so I'm gonna give you a little bit of an example. So a little bit of a math problem here. Let me switch over to this side so you guys can see me and the problem. So what most people are concerned about is like their ROAS. So like in campaign 1, we see like an 8x return versus like campaign 2, we see a 3x return. So like some people like, as they're scaling, like the 8x goes to like 6x and then a 5x and they're like, oh no, we have to turn this off. We have to turn this off. But they'll never get to those big buck net, those net campaigns where you're netting tons and tons of cash, right? So as you can see in these examples, campaign 1, very low spend campaign, only $10,000. You're 8xing your money. So you're putting in $1, getting 8x out. If there is a coin slot in Vegas, you're gonna pull the lever every single time. You're gonna make that trade as many times as you possibly can, right? So if you're making $80,000 and you have a 35% margin, you're netting $28,000. So, pretty good. And this is with, the spend included into your margin. So super, super healthy margin, right? So on campaign 2, if you're spending $250,000, you're only a measly 3x. You're making $750,000 at a 20% margin. You're making 150 grand in net. So what's the difference here? So this is a higher return on your money, but this has a much higher net. So a lot of people, when they're running the campaigns themselves, or like they're working with people like myself, like an agency, and they'll start to see like at scale, they'll start to say at scale, like the multipliers going down, ticking down. But this is what we want to focus on. We want to focus on our net. Because at scale, inefficiencies happen. It's how the game works. So you just got to roll with the punches. Like you shouldn't be expecting your $40 appointment cost that you were getting, like maybe around this range. Like you shouldn't be expecting it when you're dropping $250,000 a month on marketing, right? So that is a mental thing that I see where people, they just kill their potential with their company and with their, with their marketing because they have such a crazy expectation on the returns that they think that they should be getting, right? Like what does should even mean? Should compared to what? Should compared to what you were doing at $10,000. You should not be comparing that because we're trying to make some cash. We're trying to make some cash. this is just some pocket change, right? And you could scale this up, practically infinitely in a market like roofing, right? Tons of homes that need roofs, right? So tons and tons of room. So that's mistake 5. Just kidding, not quite done with mistake 5, have a little bit of a story. So this is me years back when we were first getting into like the roofing marketing game, and we didn't really understand what we were doing, and we kind of had this improper expectation. We kind of had that ceiling on us, So when we were kind of getting our first big campaigns through the door, we kind of fell into like the in-between, right? Like we were like, hey, we're used to getting these $40 appointments, and now like this client wants to be quadrupling their spend, and now instead of $40, like we're seeing like $65 appointments, and little did we know, like we're still netting crazy amounts of cash. Like we're still pumping out tons of profit, but we would like shut off ad sets because it like wasn't to our standard, right? Because we thought that they should be at $40 an appointment. But when they started to eke up to like 60, 65, we shut it off, right? So like these are profitable ad sets that we should be trying to push money into, right? Like even if like you're in Vegas, once again, this is the same example, you put $1 in, you get like $1.10 out. Like, it's not the most efficient campaign in the world. It kind of like going back to this, but like it's still a profitable strategy. You shouldn't be pushing all of your focus into it. Like you try to make other efficient, ad sets or strategies pop, but like dollars still need to be going into it, right? Especially something with ads where it doesn't take a ton of manpower to run that campaign. Like we just push money through it and it produces leads, right? So we were falling into this trap where we were seeing like at scale, these inefficiencies start to happen, and we're shutting off ad sets, right? And then once we went to a conference and we were talking to somebody who's like pretty much 5 years ahead of us, right? And we kind of explained this problem to them, and he laughs at us, right? Just like how I laugh at some people now, like he laughed at us. And he's like, dude, you're killing it. What the hell are you doing? And then it was one of those like duh moments, right? Where like we understood, like, okay, we understood it. So from there, like we got campaigns, like I think the biggest campaign at that time, we were like spending maybe $50,000 a month. Like shortly after, like within like maybe like a quarter, maybe 2 quarters, like we had campaigns that were pretty much 10x that size because we were still netting, right? Like we were still making the cash. Maybe it wasn't the 8x, we were still maybe 3xing, but we're still netting quite a lot more money, right? So a little bit of a story for you guys there. All right, guys, so these are like 5 main mistakes. When I was like sitting down and thinking about how to format this video, these are the 5 main things that really were hindering us. And once we learned how to break those shackles, it really took us to the next level. And we were able to go from spending measly campaigns like this to campaigns like this, right? So hopefully if you apply these and avoid these mistakes and use this video as almost like a time machine, because I spent years making these mistakes, even though I look young, spent years making these mistakes. Like if you can watch this video, hopefully it could fast track you a couple of years so you can get these like bigger campaigns as soon as humanly possible. So hopefully that helps. Talk to you guys soon.